Hello, my friends. Hello, hello, hello. So, this week's episode, I have been thinking about a lot. Um, I was going to interview someone on Monday and air that today, but unfortunately, they were feeling a bit under the weather. So, I will be doing an episode with them in the future. But today's episode comes to me after a series of things occurred this week. And if you notice, the first thing you should notice, if you've been here on a regular basis, is I don't have my pretty screen behind me. So I have a screen I put up to cover the messiness of my space. I used to fear showing that my space, my house, my kitchen, the things were messy. And when I started my business several years ago, when I officially started my business, I had been doing the work that I do for a long time. But when I officially started my business, I strive to show a good front, to hide the weaknesses, to not be vulnerable. And as I have learned over the course of the many years of my life, nearly 65, that vulnerability, being who we are, is so important to being ourselves, to being authentic, to connecting with others, because we all have moments of weakness, vulnerability, messiness. This morning, I was listening to a story by a young actor about what is or how do we discover our purpose. And then I started to think back over the course of the last week. And I recalled that going to interview that person for this week's Pretty episode. And then on top of that, I'm in Tech Week with a group of middle schoolers for a play that they're doing next week. And then I'm also in the audition / last night was callbacks for a show that I'm directing on the heels of that middle school show. I backtracked a little bit more and I thought about what was going on in my own house and the messiness of my office. So this space over here is my husband's. And he's a clinical psychologist and sometimes comes home and does paperwork and whatnot. And this is the space that he has. And if you notice, he's got 1, 2, 3 monitors. I only have 2. I have you and I have you. And then this space back here is my space. And I am in the middle of annual reports for an executive board, a nonprofit executive board that I sit on. And we are in annual reports and preparation for convention. And so I have little stacks of things. And then this mess under here needs to actually go over there, but I can't put anything over there until my son finishes moving out of his space downstairs so that what I have over there can go down there. And so it becomes this cycle, right? And then you can back up even further and go back to about the time I started this podcast, The Creative Connection. And why did I start this? I started this because I felt drawn to helping others see the connection between who they were and that niggling little innovation, creative bug that we all have in us. And some of us choose not to see that bug in us. And so then I got to thinking about today's episode, and I didn't have anybody's, recording to share. And I was running late this morning. I've been running for a week, which is not like me. For those of you that know me, I'm usually early to wherever I'm going. But I feel like I've been behind this last week. And I thought, you know what? On the road or the journey to creating the life that we are passionate about living, sometimes messes happen. So I thought I would share a little bit about the messiness to a purposeful life. And share a short little anecdote about what that might look based on how I've experienced it, or how my husband has experienced it, or maybe some of the children in my life, mostly my children. For those of you that have been here before, I have 3 adult sons. One turned 27 yesterday, one turned 29 last week, and one will turn 31 at the end of May. So, thinking back to when I was a little girl, somewhere around 7 or 8, I didn't have a lot of friends. And the friends that I did have, my mother was instrumental in helping me establish and create those friendships, those relationships. And the reason she was instrumental in creating those relationships is because I was shy. For those of you that might be watching this that are shy, you're going, but you're on YouTube, and how on earth can you be shy? I am shy. I would much rather play a character on stage or do a reading from a poem or someone else's script than to do what I am doing today. Today exposes a weakness that I think I have. Notice the words that I'm using. A weakness that I think I have. So when I was 6 or 7, somewhere around that time frame, leading to my 8th grade birthday, my family was moving yet again. When I was very little, 5, we moved from Michigan to Minnesota. We lived in a house. I don't even remember the house. I remember the street we lived on, because at the end of the street, there was an abandoned house that we all thought, the 2 neighbor kids and I thought, the wicked witch from Hansel and Gretel lived in that house. And we didn't want to get too close because we didn't want to get thrown into the oven and baked into cookies. And then we moved from that house about 6 months later to another house, one of my most favorite houses that I can recall. That house was on the upper level, was 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a dining room, and then there was a circular bathroom. And then there was a stairway that went downstairs, and in the downstairs there was a daylight basement that had this beautiful fireplace and had a screened-in porch. And back in the 60s when I was growing up, 60s and 70s when I was growing up, there was a full bar down there, and then it opened onto this massive yard at the top of a hill, and there was forest going down the hill. And what I remember most about that house, there are a couple things I remember most about that house. It was at the top of the neighborhood, and I could see everything. And in the summer, we had so many fireflies in our backyard. I think that is when I first started to believe that fireflies were fairies and fairy lights were lighting the backyard. And I would create stories about fairies and how they could help us. Indication that I was on the road to becoming a storyteller right there. The other thing I remember about that house is about a year and a half after we lived there, the neighbor boy who lived just a little bit further up the hill at the top of the cul-de-sac, They were getting ready to move, and the moving van that was parked in their driveway's brake gave out. And it came rumbling down one day while my family and I were sitting at the dining room table, came rumbling down the hill and hit our house, and the whole house shook. My father thought it was kids outside. And so, lo and behold, when he went to try and open the front door and could not open the front door because there was a moving van sitting there, I remember that. There were a few other things I remembered, but those two stories I remember. When I was 8, 9, shortly after that moving van hit our house and after the house was repaired, my dad had found another house in another neighborhood somewhere else, and we were going to be moving. And all I was told about this move is that I'll love the neighborhood, and there's a lake at the bottom of the hill that has a beach, and there are lots of kids in that neighborhood my age, and so on and so forth. That move, honestly, was one of the hardest moves that I ever made because I just established some relationships with some people, and it had taken me a long time to get those relationships as a shy kid. Shortly before we were to move, I made the decision that I needed to go visit my friend at her house, and so I rode the bus home with her one day. Did not inform my parents. There were lots of things about that I did not do. Right or wrong, it didn't matter. I didn't know. It had to do more with, I think, what I needed in that moment, which was I needed to stay connected to this girl who had been my friend, my best friend through some interesting things. Her name was Betsy, short for Elizabeth. Betsy. Well, long about dinner time, Betsy's mom said, "Cyndi, is your mom coming to get you soon?" I said, "Oh, I'm sure she'll be here soon. I know she has to work today." And so Betsy's mom fed me dinner. Dinner came and went, and it was getting to be about 7 o'clock. And Betsy's mom said, "Maybe we should call your mom." So we called my mom after Betsy's mom found the directory for school and found my home phone number and called the house. And my mother was fit to be tied because she had no idea where I was. They thought maybe I had been kidnapped or stolen, or I was injured or dead somewhere. And so my mother came and picked me up. And what I remember on the heels of that is that from that day forward, for the rest of the time I was in that school, there was a new rule at school, and that was you could not ride the bus home with any of your friends unless you had a note from your parent to do so. And then we moved to this new town, and again, I was slow to make friends, and the friends that I created and made, my mother was instrumental again in creating those. We lived in that house for 10 years. That was the longest I lived in any house. Over time, the friends that I had made that my mother helped get started, some of them stayed and some of them went away. And there were lots of things that occurred during that time. I was afraid early on that I'd lose the friends if we didn't do the same things. That's when I tried out for band and choir, was rejected by both and told as such by the band teacher. And my mother, being a teacher herself, went about correcting it. And that's when I met my piano teacher, who became my life coach. And I will tell you that there are probably many music teachers that you all have had or that others will have in the future that become life coaches. They become our Sherpas, our guides down the path and the journey of our life. And Mrs. Mord was that for me. Going into my senior year in high school, my father was offered a job in one of two places, either on the East Coast in New Hampshire or on the West Coast in Washington. Ultimately, my father decided Washington, but there were many things that occurred during my senior year in high school that the thing I wanted to do, the thing I wanted to expose myself to, because I thought it was a part of my journey of life, I had roadblocks put up by my family because it didn't fit with what the family wanted. Somewhere in the middle of my senior year in high school, I met a young man who I thought I was in love with. We had talked about getting married, and a decision was made that I would come back to Minnesota sometime in the fall with him, but I would first move to Washington. So I put my attending the University of Washington on hold, and at that point in time, I thought it was actually to never do it. And I like to call this time period in my life, at 18, ran away from home for the first time for something that I thought I wanted and I deserved. There is so much mess in all of that, but you know what? At nearly 65, sitting here and looking back on my life, I would not have given up any of those things. As messy as they were, and as painful as they were at the time, they have created the person that I have become. In the summer of 2016, I was on vacation with my husband in New York City, and I've shared this before, but I experienced a deep, excruciating physical pain that led me to reviewing all of my life history. Now, some of the stories I've shared, and some other stories, multitudes of stories, popped up to my memory banks over the course of that 7 days I was in New York. And what I learned about myself because of pain is that my body was trying to remind me of the things that I felt drawn to, that I felt were a part of the reason why I was put on this planet at this time. One of them is storytelling, sharing stories, whether it be helping to direct other people up on a stage, or whether it be me on a stage, or whether it be people that are in business for themselves or working for others that are visionaries, but don't know how to put words to the voice that they have inside of them to create what it is that they want to create. They don't know how to align that to their vision of who they see themselves being. And they don't see the connection to aligning to what matters most in their life. That is where the creative connection came from. I wanted to create a space and a place where I in partnership with others, can have conversations about the things that come up that we want to create, that help connect us to a community and a sense of belonging. All of this leading to creating a life that we, you, us, are passionate about living. This morning, I was going on to the site I use to do my my own beginning of day personal meditations. And if you're connected to me on Facebook, you would have seen this morning. But what I shared this morning, I need to pull it up because I want to get the words right as to what I shared. The secret of happiness is not doing what one likes, but in liking what one does. This is by James M. Barrie. And in my Facebook / Instagram / wherever it goes, posts, what I wrote in relationship to that is many years ago, I created a business to help others create a life they are passionate about living. I still do this work today because I love it. So as we round out today, two things. One, I do have a couple of classes coming up. That was not the point of today. The point of today was about the messiness of living a purposeful life. But they are finding your still point, which is about quieting down so that you can tap into that voice inside you that is drawing you to something that really means something to you. The second is centered and focused, and that is about what do you do when you find that still point and that voice is speaking? How do you narrow in and focus on that and create the purposeful life? So some of the stories that I shared today, among others, are in my upcoming memoir, Courageous, A Journey from Pain to Purpose, which will launch sometime about the middle of the year. I've included a link for following that so that you can take part in the book launch in the show notes today. I've also included my website address as well. So if you'd like to find out more about these classes, you certainly can. But today's reflection questions based on this idea of the secret of happiness is not in doing what one likes, but in liking what one does, by James M. Barrie. And I shared that I created my business to help others create a life that they are passionate about living. Here are my two reflection questions for you today as you go into your week. How about you? Do you love and like the work and life you have? And if not, what would the life look like? Where would you be living? Who would you be living with? Who would be your circle of friends? What would you be doing with your life? What would that look like for you? People talk about creating vision boards and manifestation. And I was watching another thing recently that manifestation and creating the life that you want doesn't come from pictures you put on a board. It comes from the energy that you send out. There's this idea of magnetism, people being drawn to other people or being drawn to doing things or being drawn to something. What is creating that? I am a firm believer that it is an energy. There is an energy that is pulling us to or away from things. Pay attention to that energy. And if you don't like what you're experiencing, Figure out a way to shift your energy. Shift your energy. How would your life look if you shifted your energy and you leaned into doing the things that you feel drawn to because you love them? No matter what anyone says. Oh, you shouldn't do that because you can't make any money. But what if you're good at it? What if you could make money at it? What if money is not the issue? What if it is the thing? Sit with those questions and sit with the big one, which is, do you love and like the work and the life you have? And if not, what would that life look like? My guess is there may be some messiness in it. But there are seasons of messiness and there are seasons of calm. There is a cycle to life. We plant seeds, we water those seeds grow. Fruit gets harvested. Leaves fall back to the ground and there's more decompensation happening. And then new seeds are planted and new growth happens. A long time ago, people would pick a career and stay in it till they died, literally died, sometimes at work. Both of my grandfathers, whom I never met, that was the case for both of them. They died on the way to work, making money for their family. I have no idea if they enjoyed or loved what they did. No idea. In my lifetime, I have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different evolutions of the work that I do. The present one, the one I am doing right now, is the one that I love the most. There were elements in each of the other ones that I enjoyed, but were not something that I was passionate about. But what's interesting is I took all of the things from all of the other things I did that I enjoyed most and put them in the work that I presently do. So they all showed me what I enjoyed doing to create the business that I now have. I'm a trainer. I'm a storyteller. I help people share their story. I help them set goals. I help them put together plans. All of those things are things that I have gathered on my journey of messiness. I am here to help others become the best that they can be and create the life that they are passionate about living. So your homework for this week is to sit with those questions. Do you like what you do? Do you love what you do? In your work, in your life, in your relationships? If not, what would need to shift or change for you to enjoy it, for you to love it, for you to be able to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and go, I love today. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Creative Connection. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please hit like, subscribe, share it with others who may need to hear this. And I will be here next week. I believe I will be interviewing someone and sharing that episode with you. I wish you a fabulous week. Thank you so much for being here.